Welcome to Module 3 of the ANDVSA Statewide Primary Prevention Orientation, Primary Prevention Under the Hood. In this session, we are going to examine what makes primary prevention tick. To start off, we will discuss the Social Ecological Model, a useful framework for considering our prevention work. Then, we will move on to discuss risk and protective factors, which we touched on briefly in Module 1, showing how they fit in with the social ecology. Then, we will talk about the spectrum of prevention and how it informs the types of prevention work and see how these different types of prevention work complement each other. To close this module, we will give some examples of how prevention takes shape by looking at prevention programs that have been implemented statewide. Now, without any further ado, let's dive in. Primary prevention is like a car. It's simple and sleek on its surface when you think about it as just stopping violence before it starts. But if we really want to understand primary prevention, we need to lift up the hood and see all of the different concepts that drive primary prevention and the techniques that we can utilize to address the conditions that allow for violence. Primary prevention requires us to approach domestic violence, sexual assault, and teen dating violence in a different way. In addition to responding to violence, we focus on preventing and addressing the roots of violence. Let's explore one way to think about primary prevention. Do you eat hot dogs for breakfast? Probably not, right? How about sausage? Are they more or less the same thing? Take a minute to think about why you don't eat hot dogs for breakfast. If we were to ask a room full of people, most would probably tell us that it is unusual to eat hot dogs for breakfast for reasons like either their parents didn't feed them hot dogs for breakfast, because they're not on the menu at our local schools or restaurants, or maybe because Oscar Mayer doesn't tell us that they are for breakfast, or maybe our friends thought it was gross. So maybe it's because it isn't considered a conventional breakfast food in our society. Whatever the case may be, we have been taught at some point in our lives that hot dogs are not a breakfast food. But let's say today, we just found out that hot dogs are one of the healthiest foods out there, and it is our job to convince people that eating hot dogs for breakfast is a great way to start the day. How would we get them to start eating hot dogs for breakfast then? We could let parents know about the nutritional components and provide incentives for parents to serve hot dogs. We could get popular opinion leaders or peers to eat hot dogs and make it cool. We could make ads with Oscar Mayer or other hot dog companies to showcase hot dogs as a breakfast food. We could get it on menus, and the list could go on. Now, if we did any one of these things, would we be able to get people to start eating hot dogs for breakfast? Maybe we could convince a few people, but if we want to increase our chances of really shifting attitudes and behaviors around hot dogs, we should work on multiple strategies together. So what do hot dogs for breakfast have to do with prevention? Historically, domestic violence, sexual assault, and teen dating violence have been addressed through intervention and response, with less attention on shifting norms. When we do prevention work, we are trying to encourage a new way of addressing violence, one that doesn't require an incidence of violence to occur beforehand, so that one day we can live in a society that promotes respect and equality and rejects violence. That silly example leads us into our first topic, the Social Ecological Model. The Social Ecological Model explains how individuals operate amidst the influence of others as well as their social environment. We can use this framework to pinpoint the factors that put people at risk for becoming a victim or perpetrator of violence and to develop strategies that address those risk factors. Thinking back to our hot dog example, we can apply those strategies that we came up with to convince people to eat hot dogs for breakfast and see how they fit into the 4 different levels of the social ecology and see how we can impact others' behaviors in different settings. On the individual level, we are concerned with the personal factors that can cause someone to become a perpetrator or victim of violence. This could include biological factors like age or gender or others such as level of education, socioeconomic status, beliefs that support violence, or a history of violence in one's family. Let's think back to our hot dogs for breakfast example. An individual level factor might be whether a person likes hot dogs to begin with, or perhaps being a vegetarian. Above the individual level is the influencer level. This level of the social ecology is comprised of important people in an individual's life, otherwise known as influencers. These people could be someone's family, their good friends, their faith leaders, or elders. The outlook of this group of people heavily factors into the individual's view of the world. When influencers hold beliefs that support violence or abusive behaviors, the individual is likely to adopt those beliefs. Let's think back to the hot dog example again. Informing parents about the newfound healthy benefits of hot dogs, or getting popular opinion leaders to eat hot dogs in order to make hot dogs for breakfast a cool thing would be an influencer-level strategy. The next level of the social ecological model is the community level. Community refers to any sort of social environment. For example, a community might be a town, a city, a neighborhood, a school, an office, or any other place where values and opportunities are developed, such as a club or an athletic community. Individuals, past and present, contribute to the community's social climate. At the same time, the established climate impacts how individuals operate within the community. If enough individuals are on some level either supportive or indifferent to violence and abusive behaviors, they create an environment that allows violence to exist. The community level can also be reflected in all of the environments in which we live. Going back to hot dogs, let's consider restaurants in our community. Getting hot dogs on the breakfast menu at local restaurants would be a community level strategy. At the outermost level of the model is society. Societal factors are those which pervade the lives of everyone living within some macro-level institution. This could be a country, an ethnic group, or a faith. Gender and social norms, as well as religious and cultural beliefs, all shape attitudes surrounding violence. The society level is focused on broad system changes that address the roots of violence, such as laws and policies that promote healthy relationships in different settings. Oscar Mayer and other hot dog producers advertising that hot dogs are an appropriate breakfast food would be a society-level strategy. It's helpful to think of the social ecological model like an onion. Each level of the model exists within the context of the levels above it. In the real world, you will never have an individual existing outside of the confines of society, their community, or their influencers. It's like the saying, "No man is an island." We all participate and contribute to the social ecology. As we mentioned earlier, within each level of the social ecology are risk and protective factors that could potentially make someone more or less likely to become a victim or a perpetrator of domestic or sexual violence. First, let's talk about risk factors. Back in Module 1, we introduced risk factors, the variables that make a person more likely to either be a perpetrator or victim of violence. Each risk factor can be found within one of the 4 levels of the social ecological model. For example, looking at the individual level, we're examining the inherent personal factors that put a person at risk for being a perpetrator or victim. On the individual level, risk factors include biological factors, such as young age and gender, self-destructive behaviors like alcohol and drug abuse, one's educational level, economic characteristics like unemployment, mental health characteristics such as a negative outlook on life or personality traits associated with personality disorders, one's social health, as well as whether or not someone has witnessed or engaged in violence in the past. On the influencer level, risk factors reflect interpersonal relationships. These include family troubles such as conflicts with family members or an unsupportive family, marital instability, poor communication, negative role models, peers that are delinquent or violent, shared economic stress, and a desire for dominance in a relationship. Community risk factors take a step out and consider the environment or context in which the individual is operating. The health of the community plays into how at risk a particular community is. If a community is suffering the effects of poverty, lack of recreational opportunities or community resources, has accepted violence as a norm, or historical trauma due to colonization or broad-based community oppression, its community members will again have an additional risk factor for violence. Accountability of domestic and sexual violence plays into risk as well. If communities are not willing to strictly sanction or turn a blind eye to the problem of IPV and sexual violence, then it potentially makes community members more susceptible. On the societal level of the social ecological model, risk factors create a level of acceptance of violence on a broad scale. These risk factors can take shape in damaging norms. This could refer to traditional gender roles that perpetuate the oppression of women, or norms that suggest that violence is an acceptable way to resolve conflict. They can also take shape in a lack of policies that provide safeguards against violence like laws, economic policy, educational policy, or policies that perpetuate oppression and limit decision-making and access to opportunities for a broad range of stakeholders. When we consider risk factors for domestic violence and sexual assault, we have to keep in mind that old statistics adage, correlation is not causation. Just because we see that risk factors are present doesn't necessarily mean that individuals will commit acts of violence. It just means that they have a greater susceptibility to perpetrate. It is not any one of these risk factors that will determine perpetration of violence, but it is how these risk factors intersect with risk and protective factors across the social ecology. On the flip side, those with more protective factors increase their chances for health and safety. Building these protective factors is much of our focus in prevention work. When you look at the factors that protect against perpetration or victimization, you will find that many of them are simply the opposite of some risk factor. However, this is not a hard and fast rule. Protective factors should be thought as independent from risk factors. Now, let's see where protective factors fit in with the social ecology. On the individual level, factors like high self-esteem and identity, mental and financial stability, and social connectedness can improve the likelihood for both healthy and safe lifestyles and relationships. On the influencer level, stability and support within one's family, as well as positive relationships with peers, cultural or religious leaders, and other positive role models can establish values of nonviolence and skills for healthy relationships. Moving toward the community level of the social ecology, certain community attributes and attitudes can have an important impact on those existing within it. This includes an intolerance of violence, engagement in supporting norms and skills for healthy relationships, and a commitment of resources to promoting healthy relationships and safe communities. Looking at society, redefined social norms and new laws and policies factor into the likelihood of perpetration. Back in Module 2, we mentioned the Governor's Choose Respect initiative, which devoted funding and encouraged community engagement around primary prevention. Choose Respect has been approved by the state legislature and has been supported across many agencies, communities, and systems in Alaska, leading to long-term prevention support and enhancements in statewide prevention infrastructure. Now that we have discussed the 4 levels of the Social Ecological Model and different risk and protective factors that are found within them, let's look at another framework that shows the different ways that we can address those risk and protective factors. The spectrum of prevention is a comprehensive framework for effective prevention. It is similar to the social ecological model in that it stresses the importance of addressing the individual in prevention work and building its way up to broader structures which can have an impact on communities and society as a whole. The spectrum takes public health theory like the social ecological model and risk and protective factors and makes them into tangible goals. The spectrum shows us that prevention is not simply about education, but rather it is about fostering partnerships and influencing change on higher levels of the social ecology in order to create communities, states, and societies free of violence. The spectrum gives us a plan. It's a list of priorities for us to keep in mind when we think about how we are going to address violence in our communities and Alaska as a whole. But it's not a step-by-step plan. It's not truly effective or impactful if we only develop one strategy or work through the spectrum step by step. Rather, the elements of the spectrum of prevention are most effective when they work together because the strategies create a synergy that can be visible from multiple standpoints, such as the government, organizations, healthcare providers, law enforcement, shelters, or education, rather than any one on its own. Let's look at some examples that show off the different levels of the spectrum of prevention. Teens Lead Ahead is a prevention strategy that strengthens individual knowledge and skills. Teens Lead Ahead is an annual youth leadership camp organized by the Tundra Women's Coalition in Bethel and youth leaders from Teens Acting Against Violence. During the camp, youth leaders from Bethel and surrounding villages engage in subsistence activities, an important component of culture in the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, while incorporating lessons about respecting one another and facilitating conversations on how to end violence in the YK Delta region. In addition to strengthening individual knowledge and skills, we want to reach out on a broader scale by promoting community education. Here, we want to connect with our community at large in order to promote health and safety. Some ways that this has been occurring in Alaska include offering classes focused on violence prevention, hosting conversations on DVSA-related topics, sending prevention staff to health fairs to discuss and promote the idea of primary prevention, organizing awareness events such as Walk a Mile in Her Shoes and Choose Respect marches, and many more. Educating providers about prevention is another way that we can strengthen our efforts. This is the process in which we train those who will be helping to implement our prevention strategies. In order to be successful, we need our providers to be well trained because we rely on them to transfer their understanding of prevention to others. One way we see this happening in Alaska is through the 4th-hour Healthy Relationships curriculum. Alaska's Department of Education and Early Development offers one-day training sessions for teachers who plan to utilize the curriculum in their classrooms. Through these sessions, teachers receive grounding in the concepts that inform the curriculum so that they will be prepared to transfer the knowledge and skills covered in the program to youth participants. Next, in order to achieve our goals on a broad scale, we should consider fostering coalitions and networks to address domestic and sexual violence. These groups consist of organizations and individuals who have partnered together to create violence prevention plans and advise prevention work for the areas they serve. Coalition building is an important key to prevention because in this level of the spectrum, by gathering stakeholders who have an interest in prevention, we are also bringing different networks, skills, and resources into our efforts, which can help us better address other areas of the spectrum of prevention. Here in Alaska, we have already created a coalition to prevent domestic violence and sexual assault statewide called the Pathway Statewide Steering Committee, which we mentioned in Module 2. The Statewide Steering Committee has been in existence since 2002, and since then, partners from all over Alaska have created a DVSA prevention plan incorporating ways to measure success. Additionally, several communities around Alaska have gathered partners to stop violence locally. Communities such as Juneau, Ketchikan, and Sitka have completed needs assessments and plans that respond to the specific needs of their communities. We will delve a little deeper into the topics of coalition building and primary prevention plans in Modules 4 and 5. Something else we will want to address are organizational practices that shape how others think and behave within a setting such as a workplace or a school. For example, the United States Army has created a campaign called I Am Strong to address sexual harassment and assault by informing soldiers of 3 ways to prevent sexual assault: intervening, acting, and motivating. This campaign provides clear connections to the Army's values, such as duty and loyalty to fellow soldiers. Finally, we can help to create change by influencing policy and legislation locally, statewide, and nationally. This macro-level effort has the greatest potential for broad outcomes as it changes the political climate to one that is more receptive to working with DVSA and therefore facilitates the process of altering policies and procedures on a smaller scale. In Module 2, we mentioned the Pathway Statewide Prevention Plan, including a number of prevention efforts which were implemented statewide. Together, these programs and campaigns are able to address multiple levels of the social ecology and the spectrum of prevention while reaching a broad range of audiences. First, let's have a look at male engagement efforts in Alaska. Alaska Men Choose Respect is a movement of men working to end violence by choosing and teaching respect in Alaskan communities. Alaska Men Choose Respect focuses on shifting norms around respect and expanding men's roles in preventing violence. This campaign is multifaceted, consisting of print-based support materials, community support for engagement, outreach efforts, as well as funding through mini-grants which are awarded each year. Alaska Men Choose Respect also puts out public service announcements with themes around the importance of teaching respect in culture, as well as highlighting what men across the state are already doing and encouraging others to get involved. Compass, a Guide for Men, is a new male engagement effort for statewide use. Compass is a toolkit for men to use while mentoring boys about respect and wellness. Compass has been designed with Alaskans in mind to provide men with stories, tools, and activities that can be integrated into outdoor, subsistence, cultural, and athletic settings. Coaching Boys into Men is another male engagement effort found throughout Alaska. Coaching Boys into Men engages athletic coaches through the Coaches Leadership Program to help shape the attitudes and behaviors of young male athletes. Athletic coaches play an extremely influential and unique role in the lives of young men. Because of these special relationships, coaches are poised to positively influence how young men think and behave both on and off the field. From speeches to their teams, to practice sessions, or simply in casual conversation, Coaching Boys into Men provides the tools to impart lessons of respect and gender equality to athletes. Male engagement efforts are working across the social ecology. For example, when we consider the individual level, young men and boys are strengthening their understanding of what it means to be a man and behaviors that support respect and equality. Influencers come in the form of coaches and other strong male mentors to reinforce messages to give them added reliability. While on the higher levels of the social ecology, a network of men statewide is there to support work that is being done locally, while media messages reach broadly to deliver messages on men's involvement in the fight against domestic violence and sexual assault. Moving on to youth engagement, Lead On for Peace and Equality is one part of a broader strategy to engage youth in prevention in Alaska. This component is a 2.5-day mini-summit during which youth and community partners from all around Alaska gather to develop leadership skills to promote peace and equality in their own communities. Youth participate in interactive workshops and listen to guest speakers centered around eliminating norms that perpetuate violence. Another component of Lead On has youth and adult mentors from their community plan a project aimed at promoting protective factors in their community. Once the conference has ended, youth return to engage their communities in prevention work, continuing the planning process and the implementation of their community projects, some with the assistance of mini-grant funding from the network. Stand Up, Speak Up Alaska is a media campaign urging youth to stand up and to speak out against violence. It also stresses the importance of healthy relationships grounded in respect. These principles, identified by Alaskan youth, guide Stand Up, Speak Up. Understanding relationship basics such as honesty, nonviolence, equality, and consensual sex, respecting yourself, keeping respect going by honoring others' differences, building a culture of respect within our own communities, leading the way by modeling desirable behaviors that promote peace, respect, and equality, and recognizing that when we or those we know come face to face with violence, it's okay to get help. When I Am an Elder is another youth campaign to promote respect, peace, and equality for the future of our state. The campaign is based on a poem written by youth in Bethel's Teens Acting Against Violence group, in which youth address what they hope to see in the world when they become elders in their community, with an underlying call to action to foster safe and strong communities. This campaign produced a number of media spots originally featuring youth from the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta region, with other communities such as Barrow, Wainwright, Ketchikan, Juneau, and Sitka creating PSAs for local use later in the year. Girls on the Run is a running program for girls ages 8 to 13, which has been implemented in several communities around Alaska. This program works to empower girls to find strength, courage, and self-respect in a crucial stage of their development. Through the 12-week program, girls learn lessons on topics such as healthy body image, healthy eating habits, and self-esteem. This information combats damaging social norms and traditional gender roles and can protect against victimization later in life. Girls on the Run impacts multiple levels of the social ecology. On the individual level, girls learn healthy habits that can guard against violence later in life. Influencers in the form of coaches can provide a strong role model for girls to look up to. On the community level, a network is formed between participants, parents, and the schools, shelters, and other organizations that offer Girls on the Run. Moving on to school-based prevention, the fourth R is a healthy relationships curriculum which originated in Canada, but it's being adapted for use in Alaska. Alaskan students can learn reading and writing skills in school, but many students have few places where they can learn relationship skills, communication, and decision-making. The fourth R includes lessons on dating violence, healthy relationships, healthy growth and sexuality, and substance abuse prevention. The fourth R is able to work across the social ecology by strengthening individual knowledge and skills, by engaging key influencers including parents and teachers through the curriculum, and also by impacting and reinforcing school policies surrounding violence. Green Dot is an evidence-based bystander intervention program that engages individual community members in prevention by providing them with the tools to intervene safely before violence occurs. The goal of Green Dot is to equip community members with skills allowing them to integrate moments of prevention with existing relationships and daily activities. This allows bystanders to move from a place of passive agreement that violence is wrong to active intervention. Thinking about the social ecology, in addition to developing skills and encouraging community members to prevent violence, the intention of Green Dot is to influence how others react and respond to violence. That wraps up our third module. For more information on statewide primary prevention programming, download the Pathways to Prevention update available on ANDVSA.org. In our next module, we will transition from theory into practice and examine how we can mobilize our communities to address and prevent domestic violence, sexual assault, and teen dating violence.